My spouse and I hail from a nation renowned for its myriad virtues, yet marred by a pervasive emphasis on academic prowess, wherein a singular examination wields disproportionate influence over one's trajectory in life. Like countless other parents in our milieu, we harbored aspirations of academic success for our progeny, cognizant of the limited avenues available for securing a prosperous future. While we refrained from resorting to the stern disciplinary measures commonplace amongst our peers, we did, however, enlist our children in supplementary tuition programs and prioritized scholastic achievements. Regrettably, our eldest offspring, now in her mid-20s, failed to manifest an innate aptitude for academia, faltering in her collegiate entrance examination and electing to forego further academic pursuits. Opting instead to forge her own path, she sought independence, distancing herself from familial confines to carve out a livelihood in the hospitality sector. Her decision to sever communication was conveyed via a succinct email, wherein she delineated her wishes for non-contact, extending this directive to her siblings as well. In deference to her autonomy, we acquiesced to her stipulations, albeit with heavy hearts, harboring a silent yearning for reconciliation. Our entreaties for her return were met with rebuke, construed as emblematic of our purported narcissism, an allegation that left us confounded, grappling with the dissonance between her expressed desires and subsequent reproaches. Years later, a tentative reconnection was initiated by her, directed solely towards her mother, my wife. Expressing discontent over our perceived reticence, she levied accusations of neglect, positing our alleged indifference as emblematic of narcissistic tendencies. This perplexing turn of events has left me questioning the nuances of familial dynamics and the parameters of parental obligation. Was our compliance with her initial decree an act of dereliction, or a prudent demonstration of respect for her autonomy? In pondering these intricacies, I find myself grappling with the mercurial nature of familial relationships and the inherent complexities therein. The enigmatic interplay of autonomy and filial bonds remains an ever-evolving paradigm, fraught with ambiguity and fraught emotions. Thus, while I may not be deemed culpable for adhering to her initial directive, the nebulous terrain of familial estrangement continues to elicit introspection and soul-searching. It appears that her intellectual limitations, particularly in delving beyond surface-level understanding and learning, have become glaringly evident. I find myself disinclined to engage with individuals who resort to manipulative tactics and contrived tests of others' affections, as she purportedly did with you. While you could hypothetically convey your earnest desire to reach out, it is equally valid to uphold her explicit directive of no contact, thereby respecting her autonomy and wishes. Personally, I see little merit in extending such courtesies to someone who exhibits traits of selfishness, fickleness, and manipulation. Her apparent stratagem of instituting a period of no contact, only to subsequently solicit financial assistance, is indicative of a callous disregard for others' emotions and a sense of entitlement. However, I recognize the possibility of crucial contextual nuances omitted from the narrative. It is plausible that pertinent details regarding the underlying issues between the eldest daughter and her parents have been overlooked or disregarded. In such a scenario, it is incumbent upon the parents to introspect and acknowledge any culpability in fostering an environment conducive to their daughter's feelings of inadequacy or estrangement. It is conceivable that the daughter's self-worth has become inexorably entwined with her academic achievements, a dynamic that may have been inadvertently perpetuated by her parents. Should this conjecture hold merit, it behooves the parents to confront their own role in shaping her self-perception and reassess their parenting approach accordingly. In the absence of a comprehensive understanding of the familial dynamics at play, passing judgment solely on the information provided would be premature and potentially unjust. Ultimately, the onus rests on the parents to undertake a thorough examination of their actions, motivations, and their daughter's emotional landscape, in pursuit of ameliorative measures and genuine reconciliation. It seemed improbable for quite some time, yet, as the situation unfolded, it became increasingly evident. He often made derogatory remarks about my father, insinuating that my dad's perceived effeminate traits might influence my own sexuality. Furthermore, both he and my mother attempted to litigate for custody, contending that they could provide a more stable familial environment. Astonishingly, Greg even had the audacity to assert his superiority as a parental figure, suggesting that he surpassed my father in paternal capabilities. Naturally, They were unsuccessful in this endeavor, but it exemplifies the extent of their manipulative tactics. Greg grew irritable whenever I addressed him by his given name rather than the paternal titles he demanded I adopt. He adamantly believed that I should regard him as a father figure, citing his purported masculinity and his relationship with my mother as validation. In stark contrast, my father served as a pillar of support and understanding. He refrained from disparaging remarks about my mother or Greg, fostering an environment where I felt comfortable expressing my thoughts and emotions. Unlike Greg, he never coerced me into adopting his viewpoints, instead encouraging me to articulate my feelings and offering solace when needed. Despite his attempts to arrange therapy for me at a tender age, my mother thwarted these efforts, and the authorities deferred intervention, deeming it unnecessary due to my academic performance. One instance that particularly stands out occurred when Greg stumbled upon a journal gifted to me by my father, intended to facilitate introspection and emotional expression. Rather than appreciating its therapeutic value, he expressed disdain, deeming it unsuitable for a male recipient. Consequently, my aversion towards my mother and Greg intensified, prompting me to limit my interactions with them, including their offspring, my half-siblings. Although I harbor no ill will towards the children themselves, I find solace in minimizing my presence within their household. My father imparted numerous invaluable life skills, including culinary expertise and rudimentary DIY techniques. Equipped with these abilities, I often prepare meals, occasionally enlisting my father's assistance when entertaining guests. Despite my proficiency in the culinary arts, I adamantly refuse to extend these courtesies to individuals with whom I harbor resentment. Consequently, when confronted by my mother and Greg regarding my perceived neglect of familial duties, I unequivocally rejected their demands. I articulated my refusal, emphasizing my unwillingness to extend hospitality to individuals I hold in low regard. In response, my mother attributed my reluctance to my father's purported influence, while Greg admonished me for displaying disrespect within his domicile. In light of recent events, particularly Greg's intrusive behavior on social media, I find myself at a crossroads. While I am uncertain of the appropriate course of action, I am considering confiding in my father and seeking his guidance. Furthermore, as I approach the age of majority, I am contemplating the possibility of severing ties with my mother and Greg, recognizing that a judge may consider my well-articulated grievances during any legal proceedings. Despite the turmoil I have endured, I find solace in the knowledge that this tumultuous chapter of my life shall eventually pass. I concur. I wouldn't extend my culinary endeavors to such individuals either, especially considering the unlikelihood of their appreciation. Wishing you the best and urging you to persevere amidst these circumstances. On a separate note, my sister, Katie, aged 30, recently became engaged to her partner of 7 years. While they haven't yet settled on a specific date, they are contemplating a wedding in the upcoming fall or spring next year. Providing some context, our mother succumbed to years of health complications 6 years ago. Given the prolonged nature of her illness, I suspect our father commenced the grieving process before her passing. This, perhaps, facilitated his relatively swift transition into a relationship with his current wife, Andrea. They tied the knot merely 2 years following my mother's demise. Initially, witnessing our father with someone other than our late mother felt peculiar to me. However, I've come to genuinely appreciate Andrea's presence. She exudes warmth and has brought immense joy to our father's life. Their compatibility is palpable, far surpassing any connection I observed between my parents during my mother's lifetime. In Andrea's company, my father radiates contentment, a sight I rarely beheld prior to her arrival. Although it took some adjustment, Andrea has seamlessly integrated into our family dynamics. I'm profoundly grateful for her nurturing role, particularly towards my children, despite her familial ties being of a marital nature. Regrettably, my sister Katie has struggled to reconcile with our father's newfound happiness. She adamantly refuses to acknowledge Andrea as a legitimate member of our family. While she refrains from making overtly disparaging remarks, her demeanor towards Andrea is marked by abruptness and, frankly, an air of hostility. Presently, as Katie embarks on her wedding preparations, my father, who is financially secure, had expressed his willingness to fund the festivities, as he had generously done for mine and was prepared to do for Katie's. However, upon learning of Katie's insistence on excluding Andrea from the guest list, deeming her presence as an affront to our late mother's memory, my father retracted his offer of financial support and attendance. I find his stance entirely justifiable, given that Andrea has never transgressed against us. This is not a tale of a malevolent stepmother, rather, it is a mature individual refusing to be held captive by his daughter's unfounded animosity. Katie and her spouse extended an invitation for me to partake in their wedding ceremony as a groomsman, with the additional honor of my son serving as a ring bearer and my daughter as a flower girl. Initially, I acquiesced to their request. However, in light of the ensuing discord, I'm reevaluating my decision. I'm hesitant to endorse my sister's unwarranted hostility towards Andrea, whom I now unequivocally regard as part of our familial fabric. Given the divergence of opinions within my social circle, I seek impartial perspectives on whether my decision to withdraw from participating in Katie's wedding renders me culpable. It appears that she is attempting to manipulate her father into leaving his wife behind for the sake of her wedding. Casey is now grappling with the repercussions of her actions. Your sister is a mature adult who has had ample time to seek support in navigating her grief. While she retains the right to extend invitations as she sees fit, she must also be prepared to face the consequences of her decisions. Your involvement in this familial drama seems unwarranted. Both your sister and father possess the autonomy to make their own choices, and you should refrain from interjecting your stance on the matter. Just because you harbor certain sentiments regarding your father's remarriage does not necessitate your sister's alignment with your perspective. Moreover, living apart from your family does not negate your sister's potential need for your father's support. In a separate scenario, I organized a girls' road trip and deliberately excluded my sister-in-law, Jenny, from the invitation list due to her aversion to driving. Jenny, who experiences anxiety, refrains from driving, and this was conveyed to us by my brother beforehand. Given the extensive driving involved in the trip across the USA, coupled with Jenny's anxiety-induced discomfort in cars, we opted not to invite her. The driving itinerary was carefully planned to ensure equitable distribution of driving responsibilities among participants. Therefore, inviting Jenny, who cannot contribute to driving and would likely experience distress during the journey, seemed impractical. When I communicated my unavailability for a family event due to the aforementioned trip, my brother questioned why his wife was excluded. I provided a transparent explanation, which evidently upset both my brother and Jenny. Nevertheless, my mother and sister assert that the decision was rational, likening it to not inviting someone who would be unhappy in a given setting. Indeed, the principle remains consistent across various social contexts. Just as one would not compel an arachnophobe to visit a spider exhibit, it is sensible to exclude someone who would find discomfort in a specific activity. Ultimately, the decision not to invite Jenny stemmed from practical considerations, and the ensuing drama appears disproportionate to the circumstances. My spouse hails from a lineage deeply rooted in Central American heritage, characterized by interracial unions spanning generations. Despite a sans discernible ethnic features, his complexion leans toward a paler hue compared to both my husband and myself. Given that two of his four grandparents also possess fair skin, the semblance of being white passing from a distance isn't entirely surprising, particularly in the context of our predominantly white European locale. During a recent grocery outing, serendipity led us to encounter our son's classmate along with her younger sibling and parents. As the children engaged in conversation, a candid remark from the younger sibling regarding my son's appearance caught our attention. While her parents appeared visibly disconcerted by her unfiltered observation, my husband and I remained unperturbed, recognizing the innocence inherent in childhood curiosity. Understanding the delicate nature of addressing such inquiries with children, I endeavored to respond with sensitivity. Employing a gentle analogy, I conveyed to the young girl that familial diversity manifests in myriad ways, much like the varying visages of her own grandparents. Despite her initial confusion, she seemed receptive to the explanation, expressing gratitude before returning her focus to her surroundings. However, the response from the child's mother was less accommodating. She chastised me for purportedly overstepping parental boundaries, insisting that such discussions were the prerogative of the child's caregivers. Although I extended a sincere apology and clarified my intent to honor their parental authority, the mother remained adamant, reiterating her stance on parental autonomy. Seeking to foster understanding, I posed a poignant question regarding the timing of such conversations, emphasizing the inevitability of encountering individuals from diverse racial backgrounds. While this prompted visible agitation from the mother, her partner intervened, signaling an end to the discourse. With mutual farewells exchanged, we departed, albeit troubled by the residual impact on our son's classroom dynamics. In the aftermath, my son relayed his classmates' palpable shift in demeanor toward him, reflecting a sense of wariness and apprehension. While the catalyst for this change likely stems from our interaction at the store, the ensuing fallout underscores the unintended ramifications of our exchange. Witnessing the distress it has caused our son only compounds our regret as we navigate the complexities of cultural sensitivity and interpersonal dynamics.